Welcome back to Offbeat Gyan. I'll be talking about The Way of the World. This video provides you with part 1 of the summary of the Restoration era play, The Way of the World. The Way of the World is a play by William Congreve. Who is William Congreve? William Congreve is a Restoration era playwright or dramatist. This particular play, The Way of the World, was published in 1700 and it is considered to be the last of the great Restoration comedies. The genre of the play, that means what type of play is it? It is a play that abides by the rules of comedy of manners. It is an anti-sentimental comedy. What is an anti-sentimental comedy or a drama that abides by the rules of comedy of manners? It is a type of drama that is realistic, satirical, that is, it makes fun of the artificial and insincere manners, mannerisms, and behavior of people. It questions, comments, and challenges the false and hypocritical words, behavior, and actions of people belonging to a particular section of society, especially the upper class section of society. In this case, it makes fun of the English upper class society. It makes fun of a group of people who display a certain type of behavior. It satirizes their flaws, their mannerisms, their appearance, the way they talk, and the difference between how they behave and how they talk. So, coming back to the playwright William Congreve. William Congreve was born in 1670 in Yorkshire in England, and his father was a part of the British Army which was stationed in Ireland, the English army that was stationed in Ireland. So, most of his youth and childhood and youth was spent in Ireland. He studied at one of the best Irish schools in Kilkenny, and then he studied classics at Trinity College, Dublin. Then in 1689 he returned to England, and he came to England with the purpose of studying law. So in 1691 he joined the Middle Temple, which is a legal society, and he joined there to study law. While he was in England, he gained the attention and the friendship of the then poet laureate John Dryden. Congreve and Dryden had a lot in common. Both of them loved the classics. Both of them respected wit, and Congreve himself was a man of charming wit, and he had in-depth classical knowledge. So this friendship proved to be very fruitful for Congreve. He also became a member of a select group of literary figures around John Dryden who used to gather at Will's Coffee House in London. So John Dryden promoted, mentored, and supported the young Congreve's literary growth. Congreve himself was a charming person, very diplomatic, and he knew how to get around society by pleasing people and at the same time saying what he had to say. So this was something that made him an admirable person, and John Dryden especially supported and promoted him. Congreve combined real experience with comic elements in his plays also. Now, coming back to discussing the play, The Way of the World, the names of the important characters in The Way of the World represent certain character types. Feenall represents someone who is of a pretentious nature, someone who puts up an act, who feigns everything, who pretends to be very kind and considerate but is actually extremely unscrupulous and who betrays everyone. In fact, The Way of the World is a statement that is often made by phenol in the play, and he uses it in order to justify all the nefarious things that he has done. Mirabell. Mirabell identifies someone who has admirable qualities and is also an admirer of female beauty. So Phenol is the villain of the play, Mirabell is the hero, and coming to the heroine of the play, Millamant, she who has 1,000 lovers. Mille in French means 1,000 and amant, lover. Plot summary of The Way of the World. Act 1 of the play begins with Mirabell and Phenol playing cards in a chocolate house in London. Both of them are talking, and at first sight they may seem similar, but as the play progresses, the difference between them becomes very clear and pronounced. There are a number of evasions in the play. The audience is not provided all the facts, and this is done by Congreve in order to establish the clear-cut differences between Phenol and Mirabell. Phenol being the villain of the play and Mirabell being the admirable hero of the play. Mirabell is waiting for news that his servant Whitwell has married Lady Wishfort's servant Foible. And then Mirabell confesses to Phenol that he loves the wealthy and beautiful Millamant. Phenol says that while playing cards, Mirabell has been defeated by him, and Mirabell seems to be very distracted. And Mirabell says that he loves Millamant, and he then goes on to speak eloquently about Millamant, her faults and her strengths. Millamant is the most delightful and charming heroine in Restoration comedy. She is actually a good match for Mirabell, and there is a comparison with Beatrice and Benedick of Shakespeare's play Much Ado About Nothing. But despite being witty and tantalizing, Millamant is very anti-sentimental. She does not display any emotions. Mirabell is very aware of her faults and strengths. Now, on the night before the first scene of the play, Mirabell had been insulted by Lady Wishfort in front of Millamant and others, and Millamant had not supported him, had not defended him in any way. And then Phenol explains why that had happened. Phenol says that it is their cabal night. Cabal actually refers to a secret meeting between a select group of people who are discussing a certain type of politics. But in this case, it is used in a humorous manner, in an exaggeratedly comic manner, to make fun of the secret meetings between women who gather and talk about all the scandals and gossip that have happened in London society in a week. And these women, Phenol says, these women, they meet 3 times a week at each other's apartments, and they usually do not like any men being part of the group. The only 2 people who have been allowed by Lady Wishfort to become members of that group are Witwoud and Petulant, and that is why probably Mirabell was treated very dismissively by Lady Wishfort. Phenol also tells him that Lady Wishfort is aware of the fact that Mirabell had actually fooled her. Now we'll come to that. First let me explain. Mirabell and Millamant love each other. They wish to marry each other. But in order to marry, they require the permission of Lady Wishfort. And Lady Wishfort is Millamant's aunt. And she has control over part of Millamant's inheritance. Millamant has only £6,000. The remaining money is under control of Lady Wishfort, and both Mirabell and Millamant want the entire inheritance to belong to them. If this has to happen, then they have to get the permission of Lady Wishfort. That seems very unlikely because she herself is a 55-year-old rich widow who is looking for love and companionship. And when Mirabell had approached her and flattered her, talked to her, she had fallen in love with Mirabell. And then Mirabell had thwarted her affections. He had told her that he was actually interested in Millamant, and he wants to marry Millamant. So this had disappointed her, this had broken her heart, and she was very determined to take vengeance by preventing the marriage of Mirabell and Millamant. In fact, she is looking for ways to get Millamant married to somebody else. Lady Wishfort has a daughter, Arabella Fainall or Mrs. Fainall. Arabella's first husband, Languish, had died and she was married to Fainall. Fainall does not love his wife Arabella or Mrs. Fainall, for his heart is engaged somewhere else. He desperately wants her money in order to sustain his relationship with Mrs. Marwood, his mother's friend and also Lady Wishfort's close friend. Now, Mirabell is aware that Fainall loves Mrs. Marwood and that he is not attached to Arabella or Mrs. Fainall. Once upon a time, Mirabell had been in love with Arabella or Mrs. Fainall, and in order to prevent a scandal from developing, he had made arrangements for Arabella or Mrs. Fainall to get married to Fainall. Because in the meantime, he had fallen in love with the vivacious and witty Millamant. And despite this, Mrs. Fainall continues to be friendly with Mirabell, and she also helps Mirabell to get married to Millamant. Mrs. Marwood is a close friend of Lady Wishfort, and she is the one who had revealed Mirabell's actual intentions to Lady Wishfort. She herself loves Mirabell, who is not interested in her. Cunning and extremely manipulative, Marwood convinces Fainall that she is devoted to him alone. In fact, he feels guilty that he is not paying adequate attention to Mrs. Marwood. So, Lady Wishfort, who is very angry with Mirabell and does not want her beautiful niece to get married to Mirabell, summons her stupid and foolish nephew, Sir Wilful Witwoud, from the country. Her plan is to get Millamant married to Witwoud. Millamant, who is very intelligent, eloquent, witty, charming and beautiful, is not at all attracted to Witwoud. In fact, she cannot bear to converse with the dull Wilful. So with this, I come to the end of part 1 of the summary of The Way of the World. I will be back with part 2 next week. Thank you.